Hello everyone, I am your host Ingrid Thompson. Welcome to So You Want to Start a Business, episode number 73. Our guest today is Jillian Bullock, and I want to thank Jillian for being so generously honest about her business journey. You'll notice it's a slightly longer interview and it is a bit chatty. Interwoven in our chatty conversation, if that's a style you like to listen to, you'll love this. There are absolute gems from Jillian and her experience in her business for the last 15 years. It has been quite a journey.
So every single Monday, there was a figure that I, put on the bank account. So it was actually an auto and it came out every Monday and I didn't have to pause it for something.
So you were able to pay yourself every week from the business, and that's when it felt real for you.
Yes.
My regular listeners know that the when was the business real question is one of my favourites. And Jillian's answer is terrific. Being able to pay herself was when she actually felt like her business was real. Jillian and I have known of each other for some time, and this was a terrific opportunity to actually meet her in person. And this podcast is such an honest conversation about Jillian's journey for the past 15 years. Jillian's a mum and a business owner and gives a truly honest perspective for being able to be a business owner and a mother. Jillian also talks about pricing in a really practical way that I think will be extremely helpful to many of you listening. She's got some terrific ideas about how to manage expenses based on some of the mistakes she made, enrolling in courses, paying for things she didn't need, and there's a story about $3,000 worth of envelopes. We speak about how she keeps herself accountable and where her feedback comes from. And she also has some unique and practical advice about how to find a great business coach, which of course I loved that part of our conversation as well. As you know, I am a business coach and I take my responsibility extremely seriously. And I have such extensive experience in a variety of businesses that when I coach a client, we truly get things done. We truly get results. Jillian does give out a few helpful LinkedIn tips and throughout the conversation. And did you know that 92% of people only accept invitations on LinkedIn that are accompanied by a note? Anyway, we talk about that. So as always, this episode is brought to you by my book with the same name as the podcast, So You Want to Start a Business. I don't advertise in any other way on my podcast. Head over to where you buy your books online for the Kindle or the physical book. If you don't already have a copy and you'd like a taste of what the book is about, head to www.thestartupsteps.com and there's an extract of the first 20 pages. The full audio version is coming soon, although you may want to cycle back through some recent episodes where I'm reading chapters of the book in the podcast. Anyway, enough from me. Let's listen to what Jillian has to say about starting her own business and so much more. Are you ready? Let's go.
Hello, and here we are today with Jillian Bullock. Hello, good morning, and it just is morning. Jillian.
Hi, how are you?
Great, thanks. Thanks so much for joining us and giving up your time to help our people with some of these business startup questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Jillian, tell us, what is your business? What business are you in?
I am the LinkedIn Ninja Down Under. Would you like me to explain that a little further?
Tell us a little more about that.
Okay, sure. So I am a LinkedIn specialist in lead generation. So a lot of people think of LinkedIn in the career side of it, which is fair because 64% of LinkedIn's revenue comes from recruitment. I get it.
Wow.
But I hate that stuff. That's better for people that are ex-recruiters or something like that. So I hated writing resumes when I was in the corporate world and don't want to do it now.
No, we don't do those things anymore.
No. So my background was in marketing and so lead generation is where I focus.
Okay, so you use LinkedIn to help people with lead generation.
Yes.
Terrific.
Mostly business to business, but can do business to consumer, but it's a slower burn.
Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the ideal clients. So when did you start this business?
Okay, so I started being self-employed in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
I started being exclusively LinkedIn in 2013.
Okay, so you started off with something else and you sort of morphed or changed into this.
Yeah. I started as a marketing consultant,
Right.
and kind of started because, as many people do, I can do better than most other people and I hate my boss. Started from that arrogance side.
You just answered our next question. Why did you start the business?
Oh, there you go. So I started in that. I came out of finance, so sort of started consulting for finance initially. Start with what you know and what you're familiar with. And
so when you say finance, you mean finance companies, don't you?
Yes, I do.
So you didn't actually have a finance itself background, you had a marketing background.
Yeah, exactly.
But in finance companies.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you thought you could do what you were doing for someone else better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never heard anyone quite say it the way you just said it, but it's pretty much what lots of people say, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is the motivation for a lot of people starting their business, isn't it? There's this feeling that we can do something better than the way we're doing it for someone else.
Yeah, and where I came from was a big company, so there was a lot of red tape and, you have to do it this way and it needs to be done, X, Y, Z, and it's like, yeah, but that's from the 1950s. What are you doing? And, just all of that sort of story. And you go, no,
so
I can
is
do
that
this.
part of why you started the business, like just to get away from the red tape, to have something simpler?
Oh, no, not really. My sort of story, if you like, is that I had both parents self-employed, and so I didn't know any different. My parents were both their own bosses, and I always knew that's what I wanted to be. So it was just kind of going through the corporate motions to figure out, okay, well, that's where I'm going to go, but what business do I do?
Right.
And I tried, my job hopping, if you like, was going from small business to medium to massive corporate to experience what each has to offer. And with people got along with me if they knew my dream and was actually supportive of it. If they tried to mold me into a corporate person, we just didn't get along.
It's really difficult to fit in when you're not that sort of person, isn't it?
Yeah. Like the movie Office, Office Space?
Yes.
Yeah, that was me. But I didn't need to be hypnotized. I probably wasn't outwardly with that attitude, but gosh, that was me on the inside.
On the inside, indeed.
Oh my God.
So you started this business, and then what did you want from the business from day one? It sounds like you've sort of answered that, but like in a succinct way, what did you want the business to give you?
I think it was freedom of time. A lot of people talk about, financial freedom and all this sort of thing. And it wasn't really that for me. I mean, yes, I don't want to be broke. But when I was growing up, my mother was the only one at the swimming carnival. I was into swimming a lot.
Yeah.
And we had the grassy knoll at the back of the stands. And my mother was the only parent. And my friends used to go over and get our magic juice and our magic jelly beans. So she'd give us a jelly bean before a race, and that would give us, in our heads, that would give us the sugar spike before we'd go. Yeah. But she was the only parent that could come. And to me, that was because she was self-employed.
Wow. What did your mum do? What was it?
I was kind of Charlie in the chocolate factory. So I grew up in a fudge and chocolate factory.
Oh my goodness me.
I know. But,
so time freedom was your big thing that you wanted from the business.
Yes.
So, and this is one of my favourite questions because it's such an interesting perspective. The next question coming up is when did it actually feel like your business was real? So you'd been in the corporate, you'd struck out on your own, you'd morphed into this ninja LinkedIn.
Yes.
Where in this did you actually feel like you were in business, and how did you know?
Okay, so I got a taste for it when you start to, you're in the black at the end of the month and you go, oh, okay, I think I can afford to give myself a $2,000 bonus or something, right?
Yes.
And then something happens next month. You get a GST bill or, ASIC registration, whatever. And then you can't do it the next month. So you're like, you sort of get disappointed and disheartened or whatever. So I think when it became real for me was working out a feasible kind of wage, and I use inverted commas here, or drawings, whatever you like, and actually setting up an auto deposit. So every single Monday there was a figure that I, put on the bank account, so it was actually an auto, and it came out every Monday, and I didn't have to pause it for something.
So you were able to pay yourself every week from the business, and that's when it felt real for you.
Yes.
Wow. This is nearly 100 interviews, and you're the first person to say something like that. That's why I love this question, because every person has a different answer for it about where it felt real. So,
and I was talking, my first wage was $250.
Oh yeah.
It
was a regular payment.
But it was regular. That was my steam, my money. I didn't have to pause it for anything, so it was still able to catch up with the things I didn't know were coming or whatever. Pay for mistakes that you spend money on, and just go, wow, that was a big $2,000 mistake, as that happens. And obviously incrementally over time, it's a completely different figure now, but it felt real when it was $250 this Monday, and it's going to clear again next Monday, and it's going to I've got 4 weeks worth of $250 sitting in there that I can clear.
But now that felt real. That's fantastic. And it's such an important point to get to, because just as a slight aside, there's been some really interesting research done here in Australia about how many businesses have never paid themselves. They've been in business 2 or 3 years or more and have never actually been able to pay themselves, because all of the money is going back
into
the business. And totally understand that has to happen for a while, but at some point, as you say, a wage or a payment to yourself, no matter how nominal, is critical to make it a real business. Terrific.
And you've done a thank you. But you've done a 70-hour week.
Yeah.
And you're sort of not even taking out $250. You're not even on abysmal cleaning toilet wage here.
No, you're not. The guys delivering the pizzas on their little mopeds are doing better than that, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. My husband, in our sarcastic way, worked out once, because he had a real problem when I wasn't paying myself a wage, and he actually worked out, God love him, how much I would get stacking shelves at Coles. And he's like, you could get more money stacking shelves at Coles for way less hours. And I'm like, thank you, encouragement, police. I'm going to sick my dog on you now because he's more loyal to me.
However, that said, you had time freedom, which is in fact what you were looking for.
Yes.
I think there's trade-off that people, like, it is what people do when they're, when they're starting a business, is the long hours, but you can choose to do them when you want. So if you need to go to a swimming carnival or you need to attend something, you've got that flexibility to do it.
Absolutely. We're working out what the kids have got on for this month.
Yeah.
And I've already blanked out. They've got a sports carnival on. That 2 hours has gone. One of them's doing a concert for their little gymnastics thingy.
Yeah.
That's blanked out. These are all during daytime. There's a sausage sizzle fundraising something or other. I don't really care what it is for. I'm going to be there.
You're going to be able to be there. And to be fair, a lot of the corporates have shifted much more towards that. There's a lot of the bigger companies are able to allow that sort of freedom for parents in general and grandparents really to attend things, haven't they?
I've heard that. The people I know, that is not the case in reality. That's
still be pretty tough, can't it? Yeah.
Yeah. My husband has to do some little white lies sometimes.
Let's not tell everybody on the podcast.
Yeah, not tell anybody. Well, he's corporate though, so But and he's been there 19 years, and he's
wow. You'd think there'd be a little more reward for that, which is the reason so many people want to start a business.
Yep.
So anyone listening who's feeling like that, then this is what Jillian's talking about. Okay, so let's talk about customers.
Okay.
Let's focus on this LinkedIn Ninja. And so what year was this that you set up the LinkedIn Ninja business?
Okay, so when social media started to come about, which is 15-ish years ago, LinkedIn's been around 15 years. I didn't hear about it for about the first 2 or 3 years. But what I noticed in the marketing consultancy business is that more and more people were asking about it.
Right.
And so I kind of went, well, you know what? I'm a sort of an average marketer. And I'll be honest, I was an average marketer. I was not brilliant at it, even though my arrogance when I left was brilliant. But so I sort of dove into the social medias, the main 4 at the time. Google Plus has sort of fizzled a fair bit, but I dove into them so that I would become an expert in them.
In this. And so so if I think about how did you know customers wanted this LinkedIn social media expertise?
They were asking.
So you listened to what people were asking for.
Yeah.
And so that would have been quite early days for LinkedIn, as you say. LinkedIn really did start that sort of early 2000s. So how did you know it would be viable to be that niched? Because people niche in your sort of marketing businesses back then, or were people general marketing?
Yeah, no, it was kind of more general. It's just where I went as well, because I went for the Big Four. And then we started managing accounts for people, and I had a team of 14 that did that. And learned a lot of lessons through that process, and how, because I'd never really managed people in my other jobs in the corporate career, which would have been really handy.
Because staffing issues can be one of the big ones, can't it?
Yeah, and that was that was a big learning curve for me. I was like, I'm not managing the work anymore. I'm just managing people.
The people, yeah.
How did I end up here? But one of the people I had knew the original LinkedIn Ninja in Cincinnati. And she was looking to expand the brand outside of the US.
Yeah.
So they said, do you want to apply? And I went, yeah, I'll apply for it. And sounds good, because LinkedIn was my favourite out of the 4 platforms. And so when I got to about module 3 of 21, I went, oh, my God, there's so much to this that I didn't know. I'm now embarrassed on how I'm managing accounts.
Wow.
I just didn't know. And so what I started to do was downsize all the people, finish where the contracts were, and just, sort of lay off one at a time until I ended up with my PA project manager and I 12 months later, because it's a 12-month program.
Yep.
And just went into LinkedIn by itself. And that was 2000. I started studying at 2013 and went by myself at the end of that year.
Okay, so that's about 4 or 5 years. So in terms of funding this business, it doesn't really sound like it took a lot of money to fund, although, as you said, in the early days you were paying yourself a small sort of amount of money because there was all these other costs. Where does that money come from? How do you fund a business in the early days?
My business was funded through, I started with 10 grand, and that was just taken out of the mortgage.
Right.
And then it was topped up and topped up and topped up when I couldn't afford something. And that kept coming out of the mortgage. And then you got to a point where my husband's like, all done. If you take one more cent out without putting a cent back in, we are done. And so that was, massive marriage strain at the time. Massive.
And that safety net, it's interesting that, because that safety net, people have savings or people get a redundancy that carries them over a period of time. And that safety net really does change how some people behave in business, and not having a safety net can actually be what spurns people on. So taking that safety net away for you, did that actually change how you approached your business?
It probably changed decisions I made, for sure. So I mean, one of the things, if I can jump into one of the questions that you were maybe going to ask, which was, what you'd done differently at the beginning.
Yes.
One of those, which is what we call the $3,000 envelopes.
Right.
Okay. So when I was very new in the business, I basically got my logo designed, and got letterheads and with comp slips and all that sort of stuff, and ordered these envelopes, and the logo design and all of that stuff cost $3,000.
Oh yes.
And honestly, I've still got 2 bundles of like 500 sheets of with comp slips next to me, which we use for phone messaging. 16 years later.
I know,
I'm recycling. But it's one of those things, like, so yes, it changed decisions like that.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a bottomless pit of, let me get another $3,000 of something.
It is. And, if I think there's one of my very early podcasts with somebody called Helen Duck, who runs Dragonfly Foods. I think it's in the early 20s episode, if the listeners want to go back. She's got a very similar story about logos and business cards, and she said the company's still got them in there. So, but Jillian, I think that's a testament of the early to mid-2000s, because that's about when she started her business in around that mid-2000s, because people forget that all this social media stuff wasn't there. So how you got your brand out was to have letterheads and business cards and envelopes and with compliment slips. So, it's in hindsight, it sounds like, oh my gosh, how could you spend $3,000? But the same people are spending $3,000 on Facebook, on Instagram posts, on LinkedIn advertising, on different types. So, the money is still being spent. It's just being spent on different things. So don't beat yourself up.
Well, I mean, the first website that I got put together was $8,000.
Yeah.
Because what I was asking them to do had never been done, and they had to write the code.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, when you look at it now, this is way before WordPress and any
Absolutely.
of that. So.
Absolutely. And it's, that's why now it is so much easier to start a business. Okay, so let's see. So you funded your business out of savings until your husband said that's enough. You have to start making some money. So tell me now, how do you find new customers? Because this is the sort of thing, the number one thing that people talk about is clients, customers. How do we know where they are? What are they like? So how do you know who is your customer, and how do you find them?
Okay, so we touched on niching earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just to go sort of back through that track again for a sec. So I started as a general marketer, but there was a little bit of a niche with finance. Okay, then that morphed into the 4 main social media platforms, which then niched to LinkedIn only. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then that also niched into sales part of it rather than recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we've niched again in a way. So a lot of my offline marketing, if you like, is within certain fields, to like lawyers and accountants, financial planners, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So service professionals.
Professional services,
Yeah, professional services rather. Yes, I'm glad you know the term. Professional services. And although, having said that, still 50% of my business is kind of under other.
Yes.
So it's niched again. Okay. So how I find customers is, the way I look at it is, I have to practice what I preach. Otherwise, what the heck am I doing?
Exactly.
So I have a benchmark of 70%. So I have 70% of my clients and customers need to come from LinkedIn, or I'm not being able to use it to generate leads. And I know a few of my competitors who rely on Facebook ads, for example.
And
it's like, why? Can't you get leads through LinkedIn? Really?
So you, so you are in LinkedIn and you stay in LinkedIn, and that's where you get your leads from. Yeah. And so so interesting. Can I just clarify, what were the 4 social media? So is that Facebook,
Twitter,
LinkedIn, Twitter,
Google Plus.
And Google Plus, yes. Whereas now, if you said the 4 social media, they actually are 4 different platforms, aren't they?
Yeah, you'd have to include Instagram.
Have to.
And then, YouTube wasn't even
exactly
thought of, really. It was probably mostly, I don't even know what was at the beginning. I think it was mostly teenagers doing stupid videos.
Well, cat videos.
Cat videos. Hey, those things go 30 million posts on that one, viewers on those.
Yeah. So let's talk about money, because, as you're dipping into the family savings and you're setting up this business, and you don't need to tell us exactly what your strategy is, what your pricing is, but how did you decide, and particularly for the LinkedIn side of this, how did you decide a pricing strategy? Because that is one of the things that people, when they're getting started in a business, they're not really quite sure what to charge. Because yours is a sort of a nebulous, service-based, value outcome oriented. Somebody's not coming along and buying a thing. They're buying your time, they're buying your expertise.
Yeah.
How do you decide a pricing strategy for this sort of business?
Yeah, okay. So there was one particular service that I had trouble working out.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the other services that I offer, I was okay with, but as a general rule, I looked at competitors for a start.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I also looked at what some of the other ninjas were doing.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't always relevant. Like, I'm actually more expensive than the other original LinkedIn ninja.
Wow.
Because she's morphed what she offers, but she also outsources to the Philippines, which I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So, her overheads for labour, whereas I'm paying, $38, $45 an hour, she's paying $6. But, to me, it's chalk and cheese with the results.
Well, and you get what you want from your people.
Yeah, exactly. And there's only so much you can come down on somebody you're charging or paying $6 an hour for, whereas if you pay $45, it's like, hello. I feel like I can be a little bit more demanding, I guess. So there was that all came into it. And then there was even a little bit around, as I said, there was one service I just couldn't get right. And what I did was sort of went to one price point and then doubled it and offered it at both price points to probably about 5 people. And that was inbound inquiries, people. They weren't like, oh, can you tell me which you think you would have because you're my friend? It wasn't that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I had 100% take up with the one that was at the lower price point. And I went, right, okay, well, it's either a good price point or we're too cheap.
Yes.
And then I think I had one take up at the double. And so I ended up choosing right smack in between because even at the low price point, I was still making money.
Yeah.
So at the one smack in between, I was getting about an 85% take-up rate.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, well, there it is. Because I remember seeing once or reading once or something like that, hearing once, that, your price point should be, as long as you're covering your costs and there's a nice healthy profit margin and blah, 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 but also what the market is willing to pay.
Yes. Yeah.
So I could have left it at the lower one and still made money, but I was kind of like, well, the market's not willing to pay the double, but are they willing to pay halfway? And they were. So I was like, okay, cool. That's now a very profitable service.
That's a terrific strategy, because the thing that gave you was that there was one person prepared to pay that bigger amount. And that gives a lot of confidence, doesn't it, that there's somewhere in between is the right price.
Yeah. But it also
Well
depends on who you end up with. Like, for instance, if you're talking to a lawyer, quite often they don't even ask what you charge. Because they're already making $650 an hour.
Yeah.
So it's like, I need this service done. I need that. Can you get it done by then? Yep, cool. Okay, good. Send me an invoice. Whereas others, you sort of quote them and they're like, oh my God.
It's interesting. It's about perspective, isn't it? Because, I was talking to somebody, and in the same day, I gave 2 people the exact same price for something they were asking of me. One of them said, oh my goodness, is that all? And the other said, oh my goodness, is that how much? And, the interesting perspective was, one had never bought that particular type of service in the past, and the other one had bought many times, had worked with different people. So I think it's quite interesting, like there's a whole lot about pricing. Pricing's so individual, it's individual to the clients, and that's where having an ideal avatar becomes so important, as you said.
Yes.
If you're dealing with lawyers, with accountants, with people who are used to charging large amounts of money for what they do, then they're used to paying significant amount of money for the services that they buy into.
Yeah, but I think it's also, sometimes I seem to get a lot of clients that have been elsewhere before. I seem to get that a lot. And, here's a case in point. I had a guy ask me about my services the other day, and it was just for a consult. It wasn't, I don't manage accounts for anybody anymore anyway. And he said, I've been having my company page managed for me for the last 12 months. And I said, okay, cool, let's go and have a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So there was 146 posts on the company page. So they've obviously done a lot of work in 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, we have a bit of an issue here. And he's like, what? And because he's like, I just don't get any return on investment for that. And I said, I am totally not surprised. You have 7 followers on that account.
Oh, dear.
And 5 of them are staff.
Oh, dear.
So I don't know how much you've been paying per week or per month to whoever's been managing this for you, but you have, I think he had 700 followers on his LinkedIn, which is a pretty low number anyway, but 700 is still more than, 2. It was perplexing to me. So that sort of, I don't know, what I would call LinkedIn mavericks out there. I mean, I'm sure they weren't paying a lot for that service, but whoever was doing it for them, it was highway robbery.
Yeah. And it sounds, well, and I think the thing is as well, particularly with something like, what you guys are doing, is what is the return on investment for that? So if I pay you this much for 12 months, how many people would we have by the end? And, is that part of this pricing strategy that says the value you will get will be this many percentage increase, this many percentage engagement, that's part of the promise for the price that you offer.
Well, that talk with that guy was part of my 20-minute discovery session. He hadn't paid me anything.
No, but you helped him to see what he hadn't got.
Yeah. Well, if I talk to anybody, whether it's a live event, I'm only talking for 15 minutes, I'm having a 20-minute discovery session, it's a 1-hour session, whatever it is, especially if they're 1 hour, obviously. But even talking to somebody waiting for a plane, if they haven't walked away with an actionable step that they can put into practice, then I don't feel like I've won. It's just the way I work. If they can't implement something straight away, then I haven't done my job.
You haven't. Well, we'll get something before we finish this podcast interview.
Not yet. Oh, okay.
We'll keep that one. But we'll get everybody an action. So maybe looking at their company page is something to have a look at. So.
For sure. And if they're spending a lot of time posting on it, which, by the way, here's an actionable step, the algorithm is not friendly to company profiles right now. It's only friendly to the personal profiles.
Wow.
So the distribution is way less. We're talking up to 50% or more less.
See, these algorithms, this is what keeps changing, and that's why people like you are so important, because we need to know where the algorithms are heading.
Well, there were 7 new features in LinkedIn last week.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
We'll get you to go through those in a minute. Let's come back to our business question.
Yeah.
Come back to this. So in terms of your ninja business, you have an exit strategy, and you don't have to tell us what it is, but
no, I don't.
About where you don't. That's okay.
No, I don't.
Most people don't. But it does, it is one of the things that I talk to my clients about is, when you're setting this business up, is it being set up to grow, to expand, for somebody else to buy? Is it to provide us with time flexibility and a lifestyle, and enough income to be, providing nicely for ourselves and our families? So, it's what do we originally set the business up for? So,
yeah. I guess I don't have a strategy, and I think that comes down to the fact that I've got all my eggs in one basket. So I don't have a full control over this business from the point of view of, if LinkedIn starts going bad and they start turning people away in droves because they do some stupid thing, or it just goes out of favour or whatever, I'm out of business anyway. So my exit could be forced upon me.
Yeah. One wonders if LinkedIn will ever do that sort of thing the way some of the others have done.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, there's been quite a few platforms that have tried to be their biggest competitor, and they've kind of killed them off. But Microsoft had a reputation for killing everything that it buys, and so there was a lot of unrest when Microsoft still bought it, and I didn't feel particularly healthy at that stage. I was feeling very ill myself, but it
seems to have carried on in a healthy sort of way.
Yeah, and it's actually got bigger because Facebook did so much stupid the stuff with their business pages.
They have indeed. Okay, so you've
that
told
actually
us,
helped.
so if we come back to what you've done differently, so you might not have spent $3,000 on stationery. Is there anything else that you would have done differently?
More of that. more of different expenses that I probably didn't really need to do. I think there's also, when there's so many of these short courses that you can do with things, I think probably researching deeper with whether that is going to actually help and deliver or not. There's been a lot of money that I've spent on, webinar platforms, for example, like a whole webinar series and how to get people into your webinar and sell them into something else. That was $4,000. Haven't even watched the first module, just haven't had time. So things like that, it's almost like, I need my time freed up a little bit more. Will this latest thing save me from that? And you don't realise there's like 70 hours of stuff to watch, and then you've got to implement it as well.
Yeah. It's interesting how much money can actually be spent on all those courses and ways. Yeah. And that is a business in itself, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. And I my programs, for example, like there's a lot of LinkedIn programs that are literally like 30 or 40 hours long. And I've bought some of them. Some of them have been given to me because I know those people. But you just don't need them that long. No. There's only
That's
so
such
much.
a good point. Yeah. You're actually better with a shorter amount and just get on with things.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the amount of knowledge that you're gleaning from this program for over 30 hours is kind of going to mostly be superseded in a year or 2 years' time anyway.
That's so true. I find with a lot of webinars that, and I don't do it with any of mine, is that the blah, blah at the beginning, and it just takes, you could almost fast forward the first 15 minutes by the time they do, before, whereas I just start a webinar and we get stuck into it. So if you miss the first 5 minutes, you actually miss the first
miss some. Yeah.
You miss something. Okay, so when you think about your business, is there something you wish you'd known from the start? And this is a different question to what you would like to have done differently. If somebody could have told you a piece of information or given you some education at the beginning, what might that have been?
Okay, I would probably say that you need to have thicker skin than you thought you did. I think that's it. Like when you just think you're so tired and you can't do any more and nothing's working and whatever, and just being able to just go, you know what? Yes, you've had a cry. It's all horrible, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you're still going to get up in the morning and get back on with it. So, I think that. So like a resilience but that's a muscle, I think, also.
Yeah, Jillian, that is such an insightful answer, actually. For people listening, when I think about our audience, to just know that having that is so important. And you need that from the beginning, don't you?
Well, one of the biggest lessons for me was having kids. Because my kids are 10 and 7, right? So I started in business 16 years ago. So they came sort of halfway through. And my 2 little buggers didn't know what the hell sleep was. They had no idea. I still never taught them how to sleep properly. They just grew out of it, right? And there's that feeling, if you're a mum yourself and any parents listening, that thing of that child will not sleep in that night. They've woken you up again. And you would rather give your right arm than get up to go and breastfeed again or whatever the hell it is, right? And you just don't feel like you're at the bottom. You have nothing left to give. And there's something, I don't know whether it's unconditional love for that child or something so deep down you never thought it was there, gets you up out of bed and you go and attend to that child again. And once you've got through the other side of that and they actually understand that they're supposed to be asleep for 8 hours or 10, when something happens in your business or when you've got this last minute deadline or whatever, you know how far you went before when the kids were tiny. You know that you just plucked this out of goodness knows what orifice. and you just did it, and it will never get that bad again. I mean, sleep deprivation is just hideous, and mine was like 2.5 years solid. And I honestly thought I would never get through it. It was dangerous for me to drive. You know, you were so tired that it was, and so it's never got that bad again with sleep deprivation. And so when you're going through business and you know somebody, I mean, I was trolled yesterday hideously, but it's like, well, that was nothing compared to the sleep deprivation of 2008.
That's such an interesting point, Jillian, because there's so many mothers and there are so many women starting businesses now more than ever.
Yes.
That's such a good example of how that level of resilience is there, that even if things don't go well in a business, even if you do have to put in the long hours it's never quite as bad as it might have been when you were completely sleep deprived from those babies.
And
that's
you just find it. I never knew I could be that resilient.
You just find it.
Just find it. So that's probably my biggest thing. The second one, if I can add, would be lone wolfing. It just doesn't work.
No.
It just doesn't work. You have to get out. You have to meet people. You have to form alliances.
Yeah.
And even if, you know, it's a completely different business or whatever, just having a network of you're having a bad day and that person's in business too. If I ring girlfriends, I have pretty much most of my girlfriends are in the corporate world.
Yes.
They don't get it. They don't get the problem I've got and the struggle I've had and the person that's trying to rip me off for $2,000 that promised me something and didn't deliver and blah, blah, blah. But the business networks that you end up with, they get it and they can even give you advice on it. Oh, yeah, that happened to me 3 years ago when such and such happened.
Yeah.
And, you know, they do the same for you. I like being on the end of the phone and available for someone when they're having their worst day as well.
And so it's that helping out, which leads me beautifully to my next question. So the next question is, who, apart from yourself, has been of greatest assistance to you? So you've talked there about other businesses and about alliances. You don't have to name names, but just when you're saying that about relationships and associations, what sort of people are you talking about there?
Okay, so like I've actually got a person, so I do the LinkedIn local events in Sydney.
Yeah.
And this is a global movement, right? And the host of one of the American cities, we met because we're both hosts. And she reached out to me and she said on LinkedIn and said, oh, you know, I'm running I'm going to run an event here, and has you got any advice? And I, you know, typed back a few bits and pieces. And that relationship has kept going almost a year now. And we've actually never jumped on Skype. I have no idea how she sounds except in videos. It's just been one of those typing back and forth kind of relationships. But for some reason on a particular day, I was asking her a question about something about her event because I saw a video and it looked really cool idea to do. And she was having a divorce. She's going through a divorce and was moving a long way away in America. And she said, I don't know what to take. I don't know what to take from the house. And I said, well, take the pets. Because I knew she didn't have kids. And I'm like, make sure you take the pets. And she said, no, there was no pets either. And I said, take whatever empowers you. Put on a pair of jeans and you felt crappy and it pulled your mood down, then don't take those pair of jeans. Leave them with him. He can deal with your garbage, right? But even a nice soap, if that soap empowered you and it made you feel better, take the soap. She was so thankful. And it was just it was two women across the world, never actually spoken to each other. But when I need a favour, I know I can rely on that relationship. I really feel like I can. And that's the surprising thing that can come out of social media and can come out of business networks.
Those business networks are so important.
Yeah, but it's even online ones. You don't have, it doesn't have to form in your local city with something you go to every week at 6 a.m. and you feel bullery-eyed and...
I did a program a few years ago, and we had an accountability group is what it was called, but it was a mastermind accountability group, and we met every Monday for months, and it was fantastic. It was a time slot, and whether everybody could make it or not didn't matter. Somebody could make it.
Yep.
And it was exactly like that. And when there was too many of us for it to be a bit free fall, we used to put the timer, and each person had their time slot. Yep. And if anybody had anything to say, and we were using Skype in those days, whereas today I would use Zoom. You know, you're right. Those groups, those masterminds, accountabilities, networks are so important, aren't they?
Yeah. And some of them are atrocious, and they're just full of hunters and gatherers and
so you have to find the right one.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. And sometimes you find different people from different things, but and you only stick with one or two people from a particular networking group or whatever. But, you know, when I talked before about where the rest of my 30% of my customers come from, they come from those groups. And quite often I'll talk to somebody and they built an account 10 years ago but haven't logged into LinkedIn since.
Goodness.
And in a way it doesn't really matter. They may not ever become clients. It doesn't matter to me. They were just an awesome person. And we end up being text buddies instead because they won't get their ass on LinkedIn.
Well, I guess if they don't need to. So
exactly.
How do you get feedback, Jillian? Who gives you feedback?
My husband's always quick to give me feedback.
We've heard about him.
Yes. I've been with him 22 years, so he must be doing something right. So in feedback in terms of what I'm doing right and wrong in my business sort of thing?
Who can give you good feedback in your business? Because if I think back to, you know, my corporate days, I mean, we had a system where, you know, you were given feedback on a regular basis.
Like KPIs or something.
KPIs, we had team meetings, and, you know, you said where you were up to on projects, and so you were held accountable a bit. And whereas when you're on your own, there's no one to hold you accountable, there's no one to give you feedback, you just march along. How do you get feedback?
Okay, so there's probably two answers for that. One, I think, is I think it's a muscle that you grow to hold yourself accountable. I look at my profit and loss statement at the end of the month, and I only have myself to blame if it's not where I want it to be.
Yep.
So there's definitely that on it. But the other thing is those groups that I'm talking about.
Yes.
There's sometimes different people within them, individuals or a whole group that'll do it. But the other thing is, and there's sort of a lesson in this one, over the years I've had 5 business coaches. Okay, and I've learnt over that time and spent a lot of money there as well. Here we go. Where did all your money go, Jillian? In all these sorts of things. So what I've learnt through that is be very selective and ask a lot of questions of a business coach before you go with them. Oh my God, yes. So what I see a lot of, and I work with them because they come and get me to help them with their LinkedIn, right? A lot of them go to some sort of business coaching school, and then their first business is how to be a business coach. Okay, so I didn't realize that was a thing. I just thought people would have integrity because they have run a business and now decided to become a business coach. I didn't realize that you could just go and do it the other way around.
Right.
Okay, so that is a massive one. There's also a lot of people that have come from corporate, been sick of corporate, and then go, I'm going to be a business coach instead because I know everything. But the thing is, most people hire a business coach as small business.
Yes.
And their experience is not in small business where you having a problem with your computer, you can just ring the IT department.
Yes.
No. You don't have $700 to fix your computer. You've got to come up with something else. Or watch some YouTube videos on how to fix what.
And how to fix, thank goodness. Honestly.
Oh, I know. Note to listeners, YouTube.
Everything.
There's a lot of info on there. How-tos and so forth. Yes. So yeah, I think there's a lot of homework to do with a business coach before you start with one. And then also their values.
It's interesting you say that about the business coach, because by the time this interview goes live, I'm actually presenting at a conference in San Diego for Mind Body Online. So by the time this interview goes live, it'll have already happened.
Oh, okay.
My topic is about the mentor, the business coach, and the consultant. Who are they? What do they do? And how do you choose the right one for you?
Yeah.
You know, I think that's so true. It's about doing your homework and asking the questions. And it really, you know, that 20-minute discovery session or whatever it is that most people do, it's often not enough for people to make a decision about, is this the right person? Take your time and do that. So it's
I knew my second last business coach was someone I'd known for 6 years. And then, we kept in contact. You know, it was almost, that was one of those relationships where I could ring him about something, he'd ring me about something, I'd give him, he gives me a bit of coaching, I gave him a bit of LinkedIn advice all the time. We never exchanged money, and there was never an official contra deal going on. It was just sort of friendly back and forth, but I did end up hiring him as a business coach. But it didn't work. It didn't work. After 3 months, I was just like, this is not, you know, this is, I felt like I was defending myself all the time.
That's
just
not a feeling you want from a business coach.
No. It was sort of, I get accountability, and I'll put my hands up and say, yep, slack there, didn't do that, this is the reason, blah, blah, blah. But it was kind of an attacking situation, and I spent an hour defending myself. And I was like, hang on, I've just spent an hour defending myself, and I paid you for it. If I want this kind of pain, I'll go and get a wax and pay for that quite easily. You know, at least I get some outcome at the end of it. I've got nice smooth legs. This is just...
Oh, Jillian, you crack me up. Okay, so someone comes to you and says, I'm thinking about starting my own business.
Yep.
What would you tell them? What would you say?
Tell me what the business is. And let's talk about that first. I won't claim to be a business coach and know everything.
Oh gosh, no.
Right?
We're not asking you from that perspective. We're just saying, if someone comes along and says, you know, what would you say based on your experience of being in business, and you're sitting having a glass of wine, and the conversation comes around and say, I'd love to start my own business. What would you say?
Depends how much wine.
Come on, tell the truth.
Okay, so I think mainly supply and demand is the first sort of genre of conversation. I have sometimes people that come to me and they're like, oh, you know, I want you to help me with my LinkedIn. I'm saying, okay, cool. What is it you do? And tell me your target market. Because sometimes I read their LinkedIn profile and I don't get what they do still.
Yeah.
And that's always an alarm bell. So we sort of go through, and they, you know, the answer usually starts with anybody.
Oh, yes.
It's like, oh, anybody with a pulse. Excellent. A good business model there. But sometimes at the end of the, you know, the sort of 15 minutes or 20 minutes or something, I'm sitting there going, well, you won't be in business 2 or 3 years later. I don't say that out loud.
No.
But I actually advise them to go and sort of hone down exactly what their business is and do research as to whether there's a market. You've got to do your research. You know, my business started because people were coming to me, asking me.
Yeah.
And that's how it morphed.
Yeah.
There was a demand there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
totally.
You know, but
and I think really asking for money for something up front is part of that research. Is will somebody actually take money out of their pocket and pay you for your idea? I mean, that's that whole idea about a minimum viable product. Is there some way of putting the product out so you can do this research, and will people actually pay you? Because as you say, to your face, people will be kind.
Oh, yeah.
They won't, and they won't want to upset you because you're so enthusiastic about it. But we need some reality checks on that, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you've talked about resilience and that idea of being able to, you know, reach a depth and you'll never have to do that again. But if I was to ask you what are the 3 characteristics that you have that make you successful, what are those 3 characteristics?
I think they would be the resilience for sure.
Yeah.
I think it would probably be the ability to read people. And that comes from growing up with a mentally unstable mother. That was ingrained in me to read what mood she was going to be in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very good at that. I can read between the lines on people very well.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, we've heard now, I'm pretty direct. So I will actually come back to somebody and say, look, I can see you're not on board with this. And it kind of relieves somebody because I'm not trying to push it, So that would definitely be one. And I think, authenticity is used a lot.
Yeah.
In all honesty, I find remembering a lie just too much effort. My memory is not that good. My memory is not that good. I sometimes have to white lie to the kids, with Santa and, the tooth fairy just came this week and so forth. But I kind of even forget what I told them.
Yeah, no. The truth is just so much easier, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. The amount of stuff that you have to juggle in your busy life to actually be able to juggle lies as well. I think my head would explode.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, so I will tell the truth even if it's detrimental to me. I will just put my hands up and go, you know what? I'm sorry, I didn't do that. I told you I'd get that done. My bad. How can I make it up to you?
Yeah.
Rather than try and spin, oh, yes, I sent you that email. Definitely, blah, blah, blah. No, you didn't.
Yeah, and move on. And what can we do to fix it? And what else can we get done? I'm with you. Totally.
Yeah. I actually got a call this week from a guy that was very irate on his wife's behalf. And he said, we've paid you all this money and you haven't even done the consults. And I was on my way to pick up the kids from school, so I wasn't even in front of my computer or any data or anything. And I just said, look, I'm so sorry. You must have slipped through the cracks. Yeah. As soon as I get home tonight, I'm going to look all this up.
Yeah.
And I will get back to you as a number one priority and amend my ways, right? I absolutely, I will drop everything else in and look this up. And what was really bizarre was I'm racking my brains then, picking the kids up, driving all the way home, thinking, I just don't remember not doing this. I don't remember doing it, but I don't remember having that guilt feeling of getting away with getting money and not delivering, And so I looked it up and my Xero software, and yes, he'd done that. He'd paid me, blah, 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 4 hours of consult, yada, yada. And then I went back through my Outlook calendar and there's a block of 2 hours on one day, week later, block of 2 hours. I delivered. I'd done it. And so I just mapped it out for him in an email. I said, look, it actually looks like we did do that. But if your wife is having trouble implementing, then why don't you ask her to give me a call, because her English is not her first language. But I'm like, ask her to give me a call and tell me what she's having trouble with, and I'll fix this, for no charge. I mean, I'm not going to give her another hour, but you know what I mean?
Rectify it.
Yeah, because this was last May. He's thinking I've ripped him off since last May.
Oh, gosh.
I couldn't remember that far back,
No wonder. Yeah.
But, it was actually, he was actually in the wrong. And I was like, phew. But,
because as you say, it would be funny, like if you knew you hadn't done something, there's this tiny thing saying, oh, I must get round to that. I must get round to that. Yeah. And you, other things get in the way and you don't get to it and you think, oh, crumbs, I've been caught out.
Yeah.
But not even have that feeling yet.
No, I had no feeling. Like I haven't signed my tax return for this year yet. And I have that feeling, I know I haven't done that.
Your action point from this podcast, find your action, is just like, so when this goes live, when you listen to this in a couple of weeks' time,
I better have done my tax return.
Sign that tax form. Okay, so is there anything else you'd like to add? And what is the action step that everybody can take away?
Okay. I think what I would probably add is not only is niching more productive, there's actually a LinkedIn trainer that says, and I'll have to do an American accent to do this, otherwise it makes no sense in Australian, but he says, and he's a very over the top guy, and he says the riches are in the niches.
Oh, yes.
Right? Now, of course, we say the riches are in the niches,
Yes.
but it doesn't sound quite as good.
No, it doesn't. No, they say niches.
Niches, wretches around the niches or some crap. Anyway. I wholeheartedly believe that. But I also believe that you need to go one step further forward. And especially if you love what you do, like I do, right? And just immerse yourself in it. You know, when I'm walking my dog at 6 o'clock in the morning, so because my husband leaves at 7, so I'm walking the dog then before he leaves, so that when the kids get up, there's somebody home, right?
Yeah.
I'm on podcasts and looking up all interviews with LinkedIn and to see if somebody else knows something I don't know.
Yeah.
10% of the time or so, I do find something. I'm like, oh, that's gold, and I can't wait to get back home and write it down.
Yeah.
But you just immerse yourself in your niche.
That's such good advice.
I would love to be put on a panel where it's live, that, you get sort of a Family Feud 20 questions kind of want to be a millionaire kind of questions and go toe to toe with some of my competitors. And I'm not a competitive person. I don't even score when we play Scrabble. But when you're confident about your niche, I think you should be willing to do that.
Yeah.
You should be confident enough in your knowledge, in your niche, to be able to do that. You ask me how to do anything on Facebook, I can't do anything.
No.
Not anymore, because it's been like 6 years since I did Facebook. It's all changed.
Yeah, and LinkedIn is your platform. It's what you know. It's what you understand. You're following those new changes, the new algorithms, the updates. So you're the person that can help people with that. So
and I don't think that there's many other trainers that go through that.
Jillian, thank you for your time.
You're very welcome.
It's been a delightful, you crack me up. It's been a delightful conversation.
There's mission accomplished. There you go.
Mission accomplished. I appreciate, so if people want to contact you, Jillian, with a J.
With a J, that's it. Find me on LinkedIn.
And on LinkedIn and connect with you. And do you like people to send you a little note about why they're connecting, or are you happy to just accept when somebody sends you a link?
Depends where they're from. So if they're from, Uzbekistan and there's no message at all, I'm kind of like, I'm the LinkedIn ninja down under, so that it would have been nice for a note. Yes. So, but the message, here's a takeaway. 92% of middle to senior managers and business owners ignore the request without a personalised note.
There you go.
92%.
Yeah. Wow.
So, and then you might have some people going, yes, but I can't do that from mobile. Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. I've worked out how.
Excellent.
There's another little button that you can press and it comes up with the message. But I always, even on the phone, even if I'm standing meeting somebody at a conference or at a party or at somewhere, and I click on the LinkedIn, I still say, hello, just met you now, or something like that. I always like to have that personal note. Jillian, tell us again what that percentage is.
92%.
92% will not accept a request without a note. So there you go, people. That's Jillian's big takeaway. So if you're asking people to connect, always put some kind of note. Well, with that, we'll say thank you very much, Jillian. And it's been terrific having you with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Jillian really is very unique, isn't she? Like so many of our guests on this program. There is so much wisdom in this interview, and you may want to jump over to the website www.healthynumbers.com.au and read the transcript for some of her gems. Her comments about pricing and the different structure that she uses, about business coaches, what she said about managing people versus managing the work when she had a team of 14 people, and so much more about what it takes to be in business. She talks about her strong belief in niching. The riches are in the niches. And what did you think about what she says there at the end about deep diving into your niche, immersing yourself in your niche? For everyone listening, whether this is your first episode or you've been with us for some time, I truly believe that whatever you're dreaming about can become real. These podcasts are designed to inspire, educate, and inform about what it takes to start, create, and grow a business of your own. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate it on iTunes, leave your comments. We all know that this helps with spreading the show to more people, and I thank you for taking time to do that. I want to just ask you, what questions do you have? How can I help you? You can email me questions at ingrid@healthynumbers.com.au and I'll reply directly. I answer all my email questions because it's important for what you need that I'm able to help you with that. As always, we say ideas without action, well, they're just that, aren't they? They're ideas. What actions are you inspired to take today? And we just might be checking in with Jillian to see if she signed that tax return. Till the next time, thanks for listening.